The rejected species, the massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Trade Consortium, stretched endlessly in all directions, its walls pulsing with soft blue light that seemed to breathe with alien life. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the vast space, her black uniform a stark contrast against the shimmering surfaces that surrounded her. Above her, floating on platforms of pure energy, sat the representatives of 43 different species from across the galaxy that Elena had traveled for 8 months to reach this place, crossing distances that would have taken her ancestors' lifetimes to imagine. She carried with her the hopes of 8 billion humans and the dreams of colonies scattered across dozens of worlds. In her hand, she held a datapad containing humanity's formal application to join the Galactic Trade Consortium, a document that represented centuries of human achievement and progress. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Elena could hear her own heartbeat as she waited for High Chancellor Dexmore to acknowledge her presence. The crystalline being sat on the highest platform, his translucent body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. His species, the Velthari, had ruled the consortium for over 10,000 years, and their arrogance was legendary throughout the galaxy. So, Dexmore's voice resonated through the chamber, like the sound of breaking glass. The mammals have finally learned to speak. Laughter rippled through the assembled representatives, a sound that made Elena's jaw clench involuntarily. The High Chancellor leaned forward, his faceted eyes studying her with what seemed like academic curiosity. "Tell us, little creature, what could your primitive species possibly offer to the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy?" Elena straightened her shoulders and activated her data pad. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Humanity requests admission to the Galactic Trade Consortium. We offer our medical knowledge, our agricultural innovations, our manufacturing capabilities, and our unwavering commitment to peaceful cooperation." A sound like grinding metal echoed from the section where Trademaster Vokran sat perched on mechanical legs. The insectoid being's compound eyes glittered with amusement as his translator converted his chittering into words. "Medical knowledge?" he clicked. "Your species has barely learned to repair its own genetic defects. Agricultural innovations? You still poison your soil with chemicals and struggle to feed your own population. Manufacturing? Your tools are crude, metal and plastic constructions that break within decades." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "Our medical teams have developed treatments for neurological disorders that affect 17 different species. Our agricultural methods have increased crop yields by 300% on colony worlds with difficult soil conditions. Our manufacturing has created habitats that have housed millions of beings across hostile environments." Admiral Zefka, the reptilian military representative, hissed what Elena's translator interpreted as laughter. "Habitats," he snarled, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "Crude metal boxes that require constant maintenance and repair. Your species builds temporary shelters while we construct cities that last for millennia. Your weapons are explosive powder and metal projectiles while we harness the power of stars themselves." "We do not seek to compete with your achievements," Elena replied carefully. "We seek to contribute our unique perspectives and abilities to the betterment of all species." The chamber erupted in sound as representative after representative voiced their amusement. The Kethmori delegates sang in harmonious mockery, their crystalline voices creating melodies that spoke of contempt. The Durwani pounded their massive fists against their platform, their elephant-like trunks trumpeting derision. The Sithara coiled their serpentine bodies in patterns that Elena recognized as displays of superiority. High Chancellor Lexmore raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber fell silent once more. "Unique perspectives," he repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your species has existed for mere thousands of years. You have been spacefaring for less than 3 centuries. You have shown no great innovations, no remarkable discoveries, no contributions that would benefit galactic civilization? You are, in essence, barely evolved mammals who have learned to use tools. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had expected resistance, even hostility, but the casual dismissal of her entire species was more devastating than any direct attack. We have survived ice ages, global wars, and natural disasters that would have destroyed weaker species, she said, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. We have learned to work together despite our differences. We have reached for the stars when others might have been content to remain on their homeworlds. Survival, Trademaster Vokran clicked dismissively. Every species that reaches spacefaring status has survived. This is not an achievement. It is a minimum requirement. Your wars demonstrate your inability to evolve beyond primitive territorial disputes. Your environmental destruction shows your lack of long-term thinking. Your social divisions prove your fundamental inability to achieve true unity. Admiral, Zefka's eyes narrowed to slits. Your military capabilities are laughably primitive. Your largest warships would be considered patrol vessels by our standards. Your weapons could not penetrate the shields of our civilian transports. Your tactics are based on crude concepts of mass and momentum rather than the sophisticated manipulation of space-time and energy fields. Elena looked around the chamber, searching for even one face that showed sympathy or understanding. Instead, she saw only contempt, amusement, and boredom. These beings saw humanity as nothing more than an amusing curiosity. A primitive species that had somehow managed to stumble into space travel, but remained fundamentally inferior to their advanced civilizations. Asterisk, I see, Elena said quietly. She reached into her uniform pocket and withdrew a small device that looked like nothing more than a standard communication unit. Then humanity will have to find another path forward. There is no other path, Dexmore replied with certainty. The Galactic Trade Consortium controls all advanced technology, all strategic resources, all pathways to galactic civilization. Accept your limitations, mammal. Some species are meant to serve, others to lead, and a few to simply exist on the margins of galactic society until natural selection claims them. Elena nodded slowly. She activated the device in her hand, sending a brief, coded signal to coordinates that none of the assembled representatives would have recognized. The message was simple, 3 words that would change everything. Project Prometheus approved. You believe humans are weak, Elena said, her voice carrying a new edge that made several representatives look up with interest. You believe we have nothing to offer. You believe we are not worthy of joining your consortium. She paused, letting her words echo through the chamber. You may be right. But I want you all to remember this moment. The chamber fell silent as Elena continued. Remember that when humanity asked for partnership, you offered only mockery. Remember that when we requested cooperation, you gave us contempt. Remember that when we sought to contribute to galactic civilization, you told us we were unworthy primitives. She turned slowly, making eye contact with representatives across the chamber. You have taught us a valuable lesson today. You have shown us that in this galaxy, respect is not given, but taken. You have demonstrated that advanced civilizations are not built on cooperation and mutual benefit, but on the domination of the strong over the weak. Trademaster Vokran chittered with amusement. The mammal speaks of lessons as if it could teach its betters. What could your primitive species possibly do to change the fundamental nature of galactic civilization? Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. Perhaps nothing, she admitted. But humanity has always excelled at surprising those who underestimate us. We have a gift for finding solutions that others consider impossible. We have a tendency to achieve things that advanced civilizations declare cannot be done. Admiral Zefka hissed with derision. Empty threats from a powerless species. Your entire military could not challenge a single one of our battle fleets. Your technology is centuries behind our most basic systems. Your resources are limited to a few dozen primitive worlds on the outer rim of the galaxy. You are correct, Elena agreed. Today, humanity poses no threat to any of you. Our ships are small, our weapons are primitive, our technology is limited. But you have made one critical error in your assessment of our species. She activated her datapad and projected a holographic image into the center of the chamber. The image showed Earth, blue and white and beautiful, hanging in the darkness of space. Around it, barely visible, were the dots of light that represented humanity's colonies and outposts. You see weakness where we see potential, Elena continued. You see limitations where we see challenges to overcome. You see primitive technology where we see the foundation for something greater. You have judged us by what we are today, not by what we might become tomorrow. High Chancellor Lexmore leaned forward, his crystalline features catching the light from the hologram. And what do you imagine your species might become, little mammal? What grand delusions do you harbor about your evolutionary destiny? Elena looked directly at him, her eyes hard as steel. We imagine becoming something that makes your ancient civilizations look like children, playing with toys. We imagine developing technologies that will make your most advanced systems appear primitive. We imagine achieving unity and purpose that will make your consortium seem like a gathering of squabbling primitives. The chamber erupted in laughter once more, but Elena continued speaking over the noise. But most importantly, we imagine remembering this day. We imagine remembering how the galaxy's most advanced civilizations treated us when we came to them in peace. We imagine remembering the contempt, the mockery, the casual dismissal of our entire species. She deactivated the hologram and slipped the datapad back into her pocket. History will record this meeting. Honored representatives. It will show that humanity sought to join the galactic community through peaceful means. It will show that we offered cooperation and received only scorn. It will show that we asked for partnership and were given contempt. Elena began walking toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. But history will also record what comes next. It will record how humanity responded to being rejected by those who considered themselves our betters. It will record the choices we made when the galaxy's most advanced civilizations declared us unworthy of their consideration. As she reached the exit, Elena paused and looked back at the assembled representatives one final time. When that history is written, she said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, remember that you had the chance to welcome humanity into the galactic community. Remember that you chose mockery over partnership, contempt over cooperation, arrogance over wisdom. The chamber doors began to close behind her, but Elena's final words carried clearly through the narrowing gap. And remember that everything that comes next could have been avoided if you had simply shown us the respect that one sapient species owes another. The doors sealed with a soft hiss, leaving Elena alone in the corridor outside the chamber. She walked quickly toward her ship, her mind already turning to the long journey home. Behind her, the representatives continued their discussions, most of them already dismissing the human encounter as a minor entertainment. None of them noticed. The small recording device Elena had discreetly placed near her speaking position, none of them detected the quantum encrypted signals that had been transmitted during her speech. None of them realized that every word spoken in the chamber was being broadcast to listening posts throughout human space as Elena's ship departed. The consortium station, similar scenes were playing out across human civilization. On colony worlds, in orbital habitats, in the deep research stations hidden in asteroid belts. Humans received the same message that Elena had transmitted. Project Prometheus was approved. The galaxy had made its choice, and now humanity would make theirs dot in the depths of space beyond the reach of alien sensors. Massive construction facilities that had been operating in secret for decades received new orders. Asteroid mining operations that had been quietly harvesting resources for years suddenly accelerated their work. Research stations that had been developing theoretical technologies began preparing for practical applications. The galaxy had rejected humanity's offer of peaceful cooperation. The galaxy had declared humans unworthy of joining advanced civilization. The galaxy had chosen to treat Earth's children as primitive mammals undeserving of respect or consideration. Soon, the galaxy would learn the cost of that choice. Soon, the galaxy would discover what humanity could achieve when it was forced to stand alone. Soon, the galaxy would understand that some species, when pushed to their limits, do not break. They evolved. Asterisk, the silent giant awakens. 6 months had passed since Commander Elena Rodriguez walked out of the Galactic Trade Consortium chambers, and the galaxy had largely forgotten about humanity's failed application. Most alien species assumed the primitive mammals had retreated to their small corner of space to nurse their wounded pride. The consortium continued its business as usual, managing trade routes and technology exchanges between the 43 member civilizations. But in the outer regions of human space, colonies were dying. Captain Jackson Reeve of the Sith-era Pirate Confederation stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching through the viewport as his fleet descended upon the human colony of New Geneva. The Serpentine captain's scales rippled with anticipation as he observed the pitiful defenses the humans had erected around their settlement. 3 small patrol vessels, armed with primitive kinetic weapons, were attempting to intercept his fleet of 30 advanced raiders. Pathetic, hissed his first officer, coiling her tail around the bridge support. These mammals still use chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their shields cannot even deflect our basic energy weapons. Jackson's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the electromagnetic signatures of the human ships. The consortium was right to reject them. They are barely more advanced than the species we hunted to extinction in the Outer Rings. Destroy their patrol ships and begin harvesting operations. The battle was over in minutes. The human vessels, outgunned and outmaneuvered, tried desperately to evacuate the colony's civilian population. But the Sith-era ships moved like striking serpents, their energy weapons slicing through human hulls as if they were made of paper. One by one, the patrol ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light and debris below on the planet's surface. Emergency sirens wailed as families ran toward evacuation shelters that everyone knew would provide no real protection. The Sith-era had raided human colonies before, and the pattern was always the same. They would take anything of value, capture anyone useful as slaves, and leave the rest to die slowly on a world stripped of resources. But as Captain Reeve prepared to order the planetary bombardment, something strange appeared on his sensors. His navigation officer, a young male with bright green scales, looked up from his console with confusion. "Captain, I am detecting an anomalous reading on the long-range scanners." "What kind of anomaly?" Jackson demanded, slithering over to examine. "The display. It appears to be a large asteroid, sir. But the shape is unusual. It's perfectly spherical, and it's moving on a trajectory that defies normal orbital mechanics." Jackson studied the sensor data, his vertical pupils narrowing to slits. The object was indeed massive, roughly the size of a small moon, but it was moving with purpose rather than following gravitational influences. Distance? Approximately 6 light hours in closing, sir. At current velocity, it will arrive in this system within 3 days. Irrelevant, Jackson hissed. Complete the harvesting operation and depart before it arrives. Probably some kind of natural phenomenon or abandoned space debris. But the captain was wrong. The object was neither natural nor abandoned. Deep within the artificial construct that masqueraded as an asteroid, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center that dwarfed anything the Galactic Consortium had ever built. The chamber was over 2 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide, its walls lined with holographic displays showing sensor data from across the galaxy. Hundreds of technicians worked at stations that monitored everything from quantum flux generators to gravitational manipulation arrays. Sarah was Elena Rodriguez's younger sister, and like Elena, she had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. While Elena had been humanity's diplomatic face to the galaxy, Sarah had been working in the shadows, overseeing the construction of humanity's response to galactic rejection. "Admiral," called her chief of operations, Commander Marcus. "Well, We're receiving the distress signal from New Geneva. The Sithar pirates have destroyed the defense fleet and are beginning surface operations. Sarah nodded grimly. How many colonists? Approximately 50,000 civilians, mostly families who moved there for the agricultural opportunities. The colony has no significant military installations. And our response time? We can be in position within 18 hours, Admiral. The enemy fleet consists of 30 ships, all using standard consortium-level technology. Our projections show we can eliminate them without significant effort. Sarah walked to the central command platform, her boots echoing in the vast space. Around her, displays showed the progress of similar conversations happening throughout human space. The Kethmori had been raiding mining stations in the Centauri system. The Durwani had been capturing human cargo vessels for their entertainment gladiator matches. The Velthari had been conducting scientific experiments on human prisoners captured during previous raids. For 6 months, the galaxies advanced. Species had been treating humanity like prey animals, assuming that the primitive mammals could not defend themselves against superior technology. They had been very careful not to attack any worlds that might attract consortium attention, limiting their depredations to the outer colonies that existed far from major trade routes. Signal all stations, Sarah commanded. Operation Prometheus is now active. All units are authorized to reveal themselves and engage any hostile forces threatening human civilians. The chamber fell silent as her words were transmitted to hidden facilities throughout human space. For decades, while the galaxy had been dismissing humanity as primitive and irrelevant, human engineers and scientists have been working on projects that would have seemed impossible to alien observers. They had been building in secret, using asteroid mining operations as cover for the largest construction project in galactic history. They had been developing technologies that combined human innovation with principles that alien species had never considered. They had been preparing for the day when humanity would have to stand alone against a galaxy that viewed them as nothing more than upstart primitives. On the bridge of his flagship, Captain Jackson Reeve was supervising the loading of captured human agricultural equipment when his sensor officer suddenly straightened with alarm. Captain, the anomalous object has changed course and accelerated. It's now on a direct intercept trajectory. Impossible, Jackson hissed. Asteroids don't change. Course. What's the new arrival time? Sir, at current acceleration, it will arrive in less than 4 hours. And Captain ... the energy readings are off the scale. Whatever that thing is, it's not a natural object. Jackson's scales began to turn pale with anxiety. Signal the fleet. Prepare for immediate departure. We'll complete the harvesting operation later. But as the Sithar ships began to disengage from the planet, the mysterious object dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. For a moment, Jackson's sensors couldn't properly resolve what they were seeing. The object was enormous. Larger than any space station or artificial construct in galactic history. It was perfectly spherical, its surface a matte gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. By the void, whispered his first officer. What is that thing? Before Jackson could answer, his communications officer received an incoming transmission. The signal was clear and strong, broadcast on frequencies that shouldn't have been possible for human technology to generate. A woman's voice, calm and professional, filled the bridge. Sithar vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force. You are in violation of interstellar law by attacking a civilian population. You have 60 seconds to cease hostile operations and withdraw from this system. Jackson's mandibles clicked with nervous laughter. Human Defense Force? These mammals think they can threaten the Sithara Confederation? He activated his own communication system. Unknown vessel, you are interfering with legitimate salvage operations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. I see, Admiral Chen's voice replied. You have chosen to ignore our warning. Very well. The massive spherical object began to change. Sections of its surface slid apart like open petals, revealing structures within that made Jackson's blood run cold. What he had taken for a single large ship was actually something far more incredible. It was a mobile base, an artificial planet that contained entire fleets of vessels within its structure. Ship began emerging from the sphere, but they were unlike anything in the consortium databases. They were sleek and organic looking, their hulls seeming to flow like liquid metal. They moved with impossible grace, accelerating at velocities that should have crushed any organic crew inside them. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "I'm reading over 200 vessels deploying from the sphere. Energy signatures are ... unprecedented. I don't understand these readings at all." Jackson watched in growing horror as the human ships arranged themselves in perfect formation around his fleet. They weren't just superior in numbers. They were superior in every measurable way. Their energy signatures suggested power generation capabilities that exceeded anything in the consortium fleet. Their movement patterns indicated propulsion systems that operated on principles he couldn't identify. Their hull materials showed properties that seemed to violate known physics. "This is impossible," he whispered. "The humans are primitives. They use chemical rockets and metal bullets. They don't have this technology." Admiral Chun's voice returned, now carrying an edge of cold authority. "Captain Reeve, you have 10 seconds to begin withdrawing from this system. If you do not comply, we will demonstrate why the galaxy was mistaken to dismiss humanity as primitive." Jackson's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Sithara had never retreated from inferior species, and his crew would never respect him if he backed down from mammals. But the sensor readings from the human ships were beyond anything he had ever encountered. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "they're targeting us. I'm detecting energy buildup in their weapon systems, but I can't identify the type of weapons they're using." The 10 seconds expired. What happened next would be remembered throughout galactic history as the moment when humanity announced its arrival as a major power. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they projected fields of controlled gravity that selectively compressed the space around each Sithara vessel. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The pirate ships were crushed not by external force, but by the fabric of space-time itself being manipulated around them. Within seconds, 30 advanced alien warships were reduced to compressed fragments of metal and organic matter. Not one of them had time to fire a shot or launch an escape pod. They simply ceased to exist as functional vessels, becoming small, dense spheres of matter that would eventually cool into exotic materials that didn't exist anywhere else in the universe. Captain Jackson Reeve had just enough time to realize that humanity had never been primitive. They had simply been hiding their true capabilities while they prepared for this moment. His last thought was a revelation that would have terrified the Galactic Consortium. The humans hadn't been developing technology that was slightly ahead of schedule. They had been developing technology that was centuries beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The sphere, having demonstrated its capabilities, began to change again. Smaller vessels emerged, heading toward the planet's surface to provide humanitarian aid to the colonists who had survived the pirate attack. Medical ships with capabilities that surpassed anything in consortium space began treating the wounded. Construction vessels began repairing the infrastructure that had been damaged in the attack. But the most significant change was in the communication channels throughout the galaxy. The entire engagement had been broadcast on every frequency used by the major civilizations. The destruction of the Sithara fleet had been witnessed by observers on thousands of worlds. Admiral Chen's final transmission was directed not at the pirates she had just destroyed, but at the beings who had rejected humanity's peaceful overtures 6 months earlier. "To the representatives of the Galactic Trade Consortium," she said, her voice carrying across light years of space. "Humanity tried to join your community through cooperation and mutual respect. You chose mockery and dismissal instead." She paused, allowing her words to be recorded and analyzed by alien intelligence services across the galaxy. You declared us primitive mammals unworthy of your consideration. You treated our offer of partnership as a source of entertainment. You assumed that our small ships and simple weapons represented the full extent of our capabilities. The sphere began to move again, accelerating toward the next human colony that was under attack. You were wrong. What you witnessed today was not our most advanced technology. It was not our largest vessel. It was not our most powerful weapons system. It was simply our response to those who would prey upon our people while the galaxy watches with amusement. Admiral Chen's voice became harder, carrying the weight of humanity's collective determination. The galaxy taught us that respect is taken, not given. You taught us that peaceful cooperation is viewed as weakness by advanced civilizations. You taught us that in this universe, the strong dominate the weak, and the weak deserve whatever fate befalls them. The transmission began to fade as the sphere entered hyperspace, but her final words echoed across the galaxy like a promise and a warning. Humanity has learned these lessons well. We have become strong. We have become capable. We have become something that will make your ancient civilizations reconsider their definition of primitive. The silence that followed her transmission was profound. Across the galaxy and the chambers of the Galactic Trade Consortium, beings who had dismissed humanity as irrelevant primitives stared at sensor data that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. High Chancellor Vexmore stood in his private chamber, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that spoke of deep anxiety. Around him, his advisors whispered in frequencies that betrayed their growing fear. The humans had not simply developed better weapons or larger ships. They had apparently achieved technological breakthroughs that placed them decades or centuries ahead of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. How is this possible? He asked, his voice no longer carrying the casual arrogance that had marked his dismissal of Commander Rodriguez. Our intelligence indicated that human technology was primitive, barely sufficient for basic spaceflight.